Hello 12A, I hope that you're very well. So I've marked most of your essays. I think I've got about 4 more to go, so I do apologise for the delay. I'll get that through to you. So each of you would have, or those of you that have marked, I've sent you a picture of my notes. I'm terribly sorry, I'm a bit of a troglodyte. If people don't know what that means, troglodyte is someone that doesn't like technology that much. I like it a little bit, but when I'm marking essays, yes, I do like to use my red pen, so I apologise. You will see a lot of red pen. All of you will see a lot of red pen. Again, I don't want to accept lower than university standard work. So I'm going to sort of push you to get to the level of just a normal English speaker. I have no interest in marking you like you're English as a second language. You're much too advanced for that. So I would have sent you the pictures, first of all, of my notes, and also given you some individual advice about things and suggestions that I would like you to change. The due date for the second draft, so the due date for the second draft is the 31st of March. Some of you, unfortunately, your first draft was not at the standard that I require. So you only have a week to get your first draft back into me, okay? So 1 week for those that need to do a first draft. For those of those that need a second draft, you've got a little bit longer. You've got the 31st of March. If you would like to get it back to me earlier, absolutely fine. As I said, we will do as many drafts as we need to improve and develop your skill and get you the highest mark possible. So I wanted to give some specific feedback today. I can tell some people that have made a lot of effort and the difference between those who haven't made very much effort. So just so you know, I'm very aware of that, and we'll go through a couple of those bits and pieces today. So let's start with the formatting. You'll see that I've changed this into wingdings. This is actually from Steve's paper. I've just changed it so you can't copy his work, which was very good. But he did do one thing. Well, you'll see here, you've got your first paragraph, a second paragraph, and third paragraph. In his paragraphs, he tends to only leave a little bit of a space, a little bit of a space here. My requirement is that you have a nice big gap to really indicate that this is a new paragraph. So please make sure that you double space here. You enter maybe once or twice to make sure that's a nice space to indicate that it's a change. Up here, you can see that we've got GAC 015 AE, assessment event number 4, his name, and also student ID. Now, you don't need a student ID, but it's good to just have it there so that we meet the formatting requirements. Down here, you can see that you've got the date. I imagine that's the date submitted, and finally the page number as well. Now, the page number should not be on the first page, so your cover page. So your cover page here, we've got the information about what assessment it's for, GAC 015, etc., and he's talking about animal testing. So this is where your title would go. Now, your title is not your opinion. It is the title of the subject or the topic of the essay. It is not the opinion of your topic or essay. And down here we have student name, the teacher, that's me, the due date, which was kind of not specific, and also the word count. Now, the word count does not include the reference list, okay? The word count is simply that which you've included here, okay? So not the reference list, just what the actual content is. The one thing I'd suggest to Steve is that we try and use the same font throughout our assessment, okay? So you can see that animal testing up here, and here is probably a different font to down here, and obviously this is Wingdings, but he's used a different font here as well. So we need to get some consistency in the font. I also like on the side here, you can see it's pretty much, did it again. You can see on the side here, it's pretty much aligned, okay? Which means that it's all in the one. So if you drew a line down here, you can see that all of the words are aligned. Please don't make it center, please don't make it left. It needs to be aligned. How you present something really has an impact on how people interpret it and how people choose to read it. Over here, you've got the reference list. This is not the reference list from Steve. It's another student whom I will not name, but this student has done a really, really good job in providing the reference list in the correct format, okay? Again, this is how you need to complete that. So the formatting is very, very important. Make sure that you format it correctly, all right? Okay, so formatting tick list, nice and quick. Number 1. Have I used the same font throughout? I will tell you that one student has a different format for their conclusion, and it suggests to me, having now read that conclusion, that that conclusion was written in a translator, being that they've written it in Chinese, they've translated it into English, and then they've copied and pasted it. If you're going to cheat, probably do it a little bit better than that. So now that, first of all, I was querying that, and then as I've actually read the conclusion, a lot of it doesn't make sense. A lot of it is in Chinglish. A lot of the words are not correct. There's a lot of repetition, again, because the translators just aren't up to scratch yet. And guys, you're here to learn English, not to learn how to use a translator. So make sure you use the font throughout, especially if you're trying to cheat. Have I used the same size throughout? Have I got a header and a footer? Is my reference list correctly formatted? Do I have a whole sentence line between paragraphs? Have I got a cover page? Have I checked my spelling, and have I checked my grammar? These two are really simple, and in this day and age, it shouldn't be a problem. You should be using WordCheck or you should be using Grammarly just to make sure that your spelling and your grammar are correct. I have seen some stupid spelling mistakes and grammatical errors that don't need to be there, and it just brings it down. When you're at university, they're not going to give it back to you and fix your spelling errors. They just won't. They're going to take marks off you, okay? So I really, really suggest that you have a look at your spelling and grammar before you hand in definitely your final version, but also your second draft. Introductions. I have to be honest, guys, I'm pretty disappointed. I did a whole, I think, 21 minute presentation on introductions in a previous class, I think maybe a week or so ago. And the introductions that I've received are really, well, embarrassing. To be honest, they're not great introductions. A lot of them, there is no thesis statement. Some people have used I or we or me. Some people have not really put any idea of what the essay is going to be about. Some of them have kind of gone straight into your essay. And I said before, if you have watched that, which I hope you have, is that the introduction and conclusion are probably the most important aspects. And all of you, both the introduction and conclusion, are actually the weakest areas when they should be the strongest. So I would highly recommend that you go back and you listen to my class on introductions, and you consider what your introduction is and whether it meets that high standard or not. So the main things that need to happen, just to keep it nice and simple, is the introduction states why the topic is important. If I'm talking about the impact of social media on society today, I might use an anecdote, for instance, the coronavirus. In Australia, there is mass hysteria, people buying lots of toilet paper and stealing all of the tablets and drugs and things like that, because there's a mass hysteria that's being created because of false information sent out by social media. So I could use an anecdote to gather that, to make sure that people understand why it's important. Animal testing, you know, why is that important? You might want to go from an environmental perspective. You might want to go from a moral perspective. Surrogacy, you know, if you think about the Me Too campaign, it goes beyond people being taken advantage of. It's also when you talk about sort of children being sold off, or the sex slave, the sex trade as well. So think about, how can I engage? How can I hook my audience? How can I engage them? How can I make sure that they know why this topic is important and why they want to read this? The introduction also states there are different opinions on the essay, different opinions on the topic. So you're not simply talking about your perspective. And unfortunately, some of these, there's a bit of a difference between a campaign or a marketing campaign, something that's advertising, that's very biased. When you're doing an academic essay, it needs to appear as unbiased, as objective as possible. So it doesn't just talk about one perspective, but it says some people will, evidence suggests this, however, other evidence suggests this. So you're making sure that you've got a balanced argument. That's a key thing, balanced argument. The next, you're going to describe what will be discussed in the essay. So if you're going to talk about violence, you'll talk about maybe juvenile violence. You might, number one, talk about the genetic differences, not generic, the psychological differences between an adult and a juvenile, the reasons behind someone behaving in a violent manner versus juvenile versus adult, and then the differences between the experience of jail between juvenile and adult. So tell us very briefly the type of things that are going to be discussed in my essay. And then finally, it hints at the author's perspective on the topic. So this is where you pop your thesis statement in. So I've got a bit of an idea of where you are hoping this essay is going to go. So if you're someone that believes that juveniles should be treated the same as adults for violent crimes, I will get that hint in that final part. If you're someone that believes that, you know, surrogacy should carry on, but it needs to be altruistic, then that's where you would actually have that statement. Okay, so nice and simple, introduces the topic, states why the topic is important, states there are different opinions on the topic, describes what will be discussed in the essay, and hints at the author's or your perspective on the topic. Okay. Again, please guys, I don't want to be wasting my time or my breath or your time or your energy. I did create that introductions class for you specifically for this area, and I can't tell you enough how much I'm trying to prepare you for university. Okay, so please go have a look at the introductions class again, rewrite your introduction and get that to me with your second draft. The next issue that I've had is some people are just not answering the question. So we're talking about, for instance, juvenile delinquency. Do not focus on the causes of violence in young people. I think many of you are quite passionate about a particular area of your topic, but you're getting distracted from the actual question, from the actual topic. So go back, have a look at your content, have a look at your paragraphs. Are they all going back to what the topic is about? If you're writing about juvenile delinquency punishment, it is not about the causes of violence. It's about the punishments. Should they be punished the same as adults? Clean, crisp, and simple. Does each of your paragraphs refer back to should juveniles be punished the same as adults? If you're writing about commercial surrogacy taking advantage of impoverished women, do not focus on whether surrogacy or pregnancy is good or bad, healthy or not healthy, okay? You need to focus on whether people are actually being taken advantage of in relation to that, okay? Impoverished women being taken advantage by commercial surrogacy. We're not having a moral argument whether it's good or bad, healthy or not healthy. Surrogacy is not any different to pregnancy. So being a pregnant surrogate person and just being a pregnant person, there's no difference, okay? So do not spend your time saying that pregnancy is dangerous. We're all aware of that and it doesn't make a difference in this argument. If you're writing about animal testing, do not just look at one perspective, but both. I don't want to see an essay saying animal testing is good, 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 or bad, 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 bad. I want an equal view of both. So make sure you've got your introduction, then your first paragraph should really be the history and the development of animal testing. Then you're looking at either good, and then finally looking at either bad, and then making your concluding statement. If you're writing about artificial intelligence, don't simply write about all the advancements and how cool it is. It's about what the impact is going to be on society. Keep going back to the question. Like I've said, it's that full circle. You need to keep paraphrasing and going back to your thesis statement. And if you're writing about migration, the question is not about whether countries have a responsibility to accept migrants, not whether migration is good or bad, okay? So it's about whether countries have a responsibility. I don't want to hear about whether migration is a good thing or a bad thing, or they're bringing violence over or increase of racism. You need to talk about what the actual question is. So throughout your essay, you need to continue to refer back to your specific question and to your thesis statement. As I said, this is not a campaign. I know that we've just worked on our marketing campaigns, but we have to remember that this is not marketing. This is different. It's an academic presentation. Okay, so we're doing an academic essay, which means it needs to be as unbiased and objective as possible. So check that you've not done any of the following. I have not used first person. I have 3, and I haven't even looked at Jeremy's yet. I'm sure Jeremy didn't. But I've looked at some other students, and there's about 3 or 4 people already that have used I, me, my perspective. It's not first person. It's not about your perspective. It's an academic essay. I've not made generalized statements. Governments will. When you say governments will, Well, basically, it's just not possible because every government acts in a different way, even if they're similar. So America, England, and Australia, for instance, might have similar democratic systems, but their governments still behave in very different ways. So you can't say governments will, governments should. If you're wanting to talk specifically about China, that's fine, the Chinese government, or specifically about Australia, the Australian government. Saying governments will or governments should, it's a generalized statement and it's simply not possible. The same as people should. What people? All of the people? If you're talking about Syria in comparison to talking about Canada, for instance, their experience and their situation is very different. So saying people, it talks about all of civilization across the world. Again, it's not possible. It's a generalized statement. All surrogacy. Again, surrogacy is different in different countries. There are different perspectives on it, different methodology, just a generalized statement. And most violence happens someone was talking about most violence happening in schools. Again, if you're probably in Rwanda during the Tutsi and Hutu war, that's not where it happened. Children are actually children soldiers, so most violence actually happened outside of the schools. So again, be careful of your generalized statements, making overarching comments. Next one, I have avoided emotive language. For instance, someone wrote about the animals sacrificing themselves for human development. I'm yet to meet an animal that has volunteered to go under the knife to make sure humans don't get cancer. So just be careful of emotive language. Again, it's not a campaign. We're not doing marketing. We're doing an academic essay. So it needs to be objective and unbiased. And finally, I have included in-text referencing to provide evidence. So whenever you're making a strong statement, we'll talk about this a little bit further in the next slide, but have you actually included in-text reference to prove what you've said, okay? If you're going to make a big statement, a bold statement, make sure that you've got some backup. This is a research essay, okay? It's not your opinion, it's not an article. You need to prove that you've done the research to back up what your statements are. Okay, let's look at some in-text referencing, nice and easy. So you use referencing each time you use a quote, every time you quote an author, each time you refer to a particular article, study, or point of view, and also to back up strong statements. So to prove it's not your opinion, to prove it's actually being provided by a study, by a professional, by a professor, by a journalist, etc., etc. Nice simple format. We've got open bracket, Johnson, comma, 2009, close bracket. If you're going to be more specific, looking at a book, for instance, you can also use the page number. Then use the correct format for your 10 references. Many of you have only sent me 4 references. I know that for our annotated bibliography, you only needed to do 4, but for your full essay, my expectation is that I have 10 references. As you can see, this reference has multiple people that have contributed to it. And you can see that it's got imaging of, so it's got the name of it, that it's online, where it's available from, so it's a website, and when it was actually accessed. So this is when you actually found the item, and this is when it was published. If you don't give me the full reference, I cannot mark you off for it. Okay, again, a bit disappointed. I did do a 20-minute class on conclusions, and none of your conclusions so far, apart from the 4 that I've not read as yet, they're not strong, they're not great, a bit wishy-washy. Some of them are introducing new items and new topics that didn't need to be there. So when you're doing a conclusion, it's important that you do not include any new information. It is concluding, it's closing off, it's finishing, it's summarizing. So number 1, refer back to the thesis statement. It's always good to paraphrase your point, your idea, or issue. So refer back, paraphrase, please do not repeat the statement with the same words. Summarize the main points from the body paragraphs. So if you've got 3 paragraphs, you're going to have 3 main points that you're going to summarize. This person suggests this, evidence suggests this, further something indicates da 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 da. Next one is significance, and this is really important. So highlighting the relevance of this essay topic and enforce your recommendations. So explaining why this is important. Why should I care about this information? So you want to make sure that your audience walks away going, oh yeah, that's actually really true or really interesting, or no, I really disagree with that. I've given an example. After reviewing benefits and drawbacks, it seems invariably appropriate that schools no longer force students to study on the weekends. So that might be my final statement, my significance, and you really, hopefully the person will walk away going, oh, that's really true, or oh, that's really untrue. And the last statement needs to be strong and ensure the reader knows your point of view in third person, no first person, and hopefully is influenced by your essay. So you really want to make sure that the person walks away feeling something, having some emotion attached to your essay. Okay, and then just quickly, how you can fail really easily, which I'm hoping nobody wants to do, but I've seen these 4 things in different areas. Number 1, plagiarizing. There is a tool on the internet, a free one that I've just downloaded, and I'm going to be pushing your essays through that. And what it does, it has a look at all of the information across the internet, and it'll pick up whenever someone has copied and pasted, and it will tell me where that information has come from. That means that I'll be able to identify who has plagiarized, and if you have, we're going to have some really big problems. So I'm giving you this hint now. If you would like to tell me not to read your essay or to put a hold on putting you through that and make any changes, I'm willing to do that for this one time. But yeah, if you've plagiarized, definitely you're going to fail. I will have to report you back to Terry and to Mr. Song, and that's probably going to get reported back to your parents. So you need to be very careful. If you're using a translator, there's been about 2 or 3 essays where I've identified that a translator has been used. It's not magic. I've just used my reading abilities and can see that, again, there's a lot of repetition, which means that in Chinese, there might be only one word for the same thing that it is in English. And so that word comes up quite a lot. There's a lot of ways that I can see it, but basically I'm just reading it and going, that makes no sense. That has been, a translator has been used there. So I can see it. I will fail you if I see it happen again. Pretend references. I am going to go through and have a look at the references you provide me and make sure they're true. So I'm going to copy and paste the website that you've put in, make sure that the author is correct, that the dates are correct, etc. And I'm going to do that for every one of your essays. So make sure that they are not pretend that you have not made them up. And the last one is lack of effort. You guys know that I do put a lot of effort into all of your essays. I'm trying my very, very best to make sure that you're going to be really successful at university. And equally, I expect the same thing. So if I see that someone hasn't really given a care, and there have been maybe 2 or 3 people that have failed their draft so far, I'm giving them 1 week to improve that. But if I see that you've not made an effort, yeah, that you'll be not getting great marks, it will impact your GPA, and there'll be a report back. So that's pretty much it for today. So as I said, I'll send back the last 4. Hopefully today you'll get those, if not last night, which is right now when I'm recording this at 7 o'clock in the evening. If you're confused about any of the feedback that I give you, particularly in your essays, please send me a WeChat message. I'm happy to help and support in any way that I possibly can. But again, as usual, thank you very much for all of your hard work. I'm here on WeChat or email, and I will speak to you again very soon. All right, thank you for that.